Hey guys, it's time for another episode of On Social, episode number 33 for January 16th, 2020. I can't believe we're saying that. But this is a show that talks about everything that has to do with social media, broadcasting, streaming, live shows, building your brand, getting the information that you need out there, and building a community. And we've got a great community because just during the intro, somebody told me that the YouTube wasn't live, and I got that going as the intro was going. So that's one of the great things about having a community doing shows like this. And I am joined today, it's just him and I flying solo, the future Emmy Award winning Jeffrey Fitzgerald from jeffandhighdef.tv. Welcome, sir.
Well, I appreciate it, Steve. If I actually don't win anything, I'm gonna have to go to Walmart just to have something to put in the background with all the, commotion you're making, but, we'll know here in a couple weeks, and, planning a trip to Nashville, middle of the month in February, which will be really cool, so, yeah, but it's always good to be here with everybody. Got a nice crowd today, 26 people already in line. It's great to see, Dave Fierstein and, Fredo, and, a couple other of the people that I know, and, we're looking forward to having a great conversation today.
Well, Jeff, one of the big things that has come up is, when you're building a brand and you're trying to do live streaming or you're trying to do a blog or you're trying to do social media, anything, it's hard to stand out from the crowd. I think that's the biggest issue that people have. And a lot of people they want to have that one viral post. They want to get that one thing that grabs everybody's attention, and they're looking aimlessly around the internet trying to figure out, how can I stand out from the rest of the pack? I mean, you look at shows like what we're doing here, talking head shows. I mean, they're all over the place, right? I mean, you see them
Yes,
everywhere.
they are.
You do them, I do them on my personal time. So how do you stand out from the pack? What makes you a trusted source? Let's start in with the conversation with that. I want to get your take before kind of giving my opinion on what's worked for me.
Sure.
How do you stand out from the rest of the people to kind of be a trusted source in whatever industry that you're doing?
Well, I mean, to start with, if you go along the lines of what we hear typically in sales coaching, and you hear this all the time, know, like, and trust. Before people are going to trust you, they have to kind of be familiar with you and like something that you're doing consistently, and something that they find value in enough to where they, follow, and they have they click that lever that says, "Hey, I want to know more about what this guy's doing when he's doing it." But when you talk about, going viral, I mean, that is, I would almost say we have examples of that with flu season, right? It's like we don't know why we get sick. We don't know who's going to get sick, but we know there's certain things that just blow up. Well, the same thing obviously is true on social media. And a lot of it has to do with, I think, original. There's certainly a conversation we're going to have about content, but it's not only what you're communicating, I think, a lot of times, but how you're doing. There's some creative ways you can do that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, I mean, somebody had made mention that I'm in Lindsay mentioned that I'm in a snow globe. I'm not actually, but it's a good representation of what's going on outside my window. So I thought, those of you that may not be getting snow right now, I thought it would make you jealous and envious that I get to experience all this snow right now in eastern Ohio, and you don't. So trying some new stuff, but
well,
appreciate the comment.
What we haven't said today, yeah, we did in show, but Marty is in LA. I
Yeah.
should have put on my green screen some snow because he's the guy that's always going to the sunny spots where we're left behind. And so I think that works pretty well too. But Marty, if you're listening, we're very jealous, and you owe us something. I don't know. Bring us back something.
The Marty McPadden World Tour, right?
That's right.
So one of the things that I like to do is I like to build relationships, Jeff, with different companies within the industry that I'm working with. Whether it's in the gaming industry, the arcade industry, whether it's in the broadcast, the tech industry. And I feel like a lot of my success has come from that because I built relationships, trusting relationships with these companies. And when they want to leak information, and let's face it, every company likes to leak information. It builds the hype and the buzz. And if you don't believe that,
That's right.
you probably believe that little aliens are coming back and you got to wear tinfoil hats. But in all seriousness, um, when you build a repertoire with a company and they trust you, a lot of times they'll come to you and say, "Look, CES or NAB is right around the corner. It's about 4 days away. We want to start generating some hype. We want you to leak out this product. And what we're going to do is we're going to give you the picture. We're going to give you this and say, oh, look what I found on the internet, blah, 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 blah. And you put it out. Some people say, well, that's kind of disingenuous, but it's smart marketing in a sense because you're building up hype that lasts beyond the show because you're already going to get that hype at the show when the public announces it. And if the company's not confirming or denying that those leaks are real, 4 days before that, Jeff, now everybody's talking about said company, right? Before the actual release, if you will, if it's a CES or NAB.
Yeah.
Let's use those examples. Um, Apple does it. People seem to think that iPhones just magically get left in a bar. Um, it's a way to
Right.
generate hype.
It is a way to generate hype. It's funny. We could be playing a game. On my list here, I've got relationship is number one because that's where you're going to be able to build that community where you're a part of that circle where you're going to be able to get more information. And I think in some ways maybe what you're talking about, especially where you're at in this, you've been around long enough. There's an influencer status with that to some extent. I don't like that word, but in some ways
Yeah.
that's kind of what it is your view, whether you see yourself or not, other people say, you know what, this is somebody that has created an antenna big enough that I want them to put my product out there, maybe see what their community, their audience, thinks about it. But there's no doubt, relationships are really going to be where content is going to start and end. And I think one of the biggest ways that if you really want to be that person to get the insights, get the picture of the iPhone 12 that now has the George Foreman grill, it's going to be in the relationship that you built long before that. It's not going to be something where you kind of write to them and say, "Hey, put me in your drip campaign for all your secret pictures." It's not going to work that way. And so there's a lot of legwork that goes into that. And there's one person in the live streaming world that I think about that I think has done just a fantastic job working every angle he can think of to provide news that's relevant for people, and that's Ross Brand. This is a guy who basically saw an opportunity to be the voice of everything that's happening in live streaming. And now he is what we're talking about. He's getting the inside interviews with everyone in the mix. He's in the know, and you're learning. And every time he's on, there's something really good that's being communicated. So it's not incredibly difficult, but you have to approach it like a journalist would, which is, I'm not necessarily looking just for what the journalistic part of who, what, when, where, and why is, but who are the players in it? And maybe can I leverage one of those people to speak with me either on or off camera and be able to tell a different angle to maybe what everybody else is hearing?
Absolutely. I like to think when you said about influencers, a lot of people think that you have to have the status with the company that, let's say, you have billions and billions of followers in order for them to leak something to you. It's quite opposite, actually. Sometimes it's predictable if they give it to that person that has thousands and billions of followers. They want that guy that kind of flies under the radar that nobody would, Jeff, they would suspect as being the leak, right? So,
That's
don't sit there and think to yourself, man, I don't have that kind of following. Like Jeff's saying, be that guy. Be the guy that's in there working hard in whatever industry that you're doing. I mean, I tell this story all the time. When I got into the tech industry, um, I would grab if a company contacted me and said, "Hey, we want you to review this iPhone case." I would review that iPhone case like it was a $10,000 item. I'd put it through its paces. I would do drop tests with my own phone. I mean, I was doing things that I probably shouldn't have done for a $10 case. But what it did was it built a lasting relationship with that company. So anytime that they would come out with something new, or if they were working, Jeff, with another company that, as most PR firms do, they would say, "Hey, Steven's a good reviewer. We're going to get you now maybe this capture card to review, or we're going to get
right.
you this webcam." Or I've even reviewed AT&T's even sent cell phones back in the day. So what I'm saying is, whatever industry you get in, no matter how small you are, if you really want to get the scoop, what you need to do is take the smallest scoops and make them as if they were the biggest scoops in the world, like when you're reporting on them. Get them out there, spread them around, because otherwise nobody's going to know who you are, right? So do your due diligence, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what it is, Steve. I mean, you've got to do due diligence because I think one of the things that's lost in this world where everybody gets a microphone, without training. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's almost like you need proper training to be somebody who's giving information, because you have to understand there's got to be balance on both sides, sometimes even more than two sides of a story. Giving everybody equal opportunity to voice their perspective, even if you don't agree with what they're saying. And from a review standpoint, the unboxing, it can't be, oh, hey, yay, great, I love it because it was something that was given to me to use for a little while. You've got to be fair to people, because you have a responsibility to the people that are watching, for them to know that this is something that, number one, it was provided to you, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to be transparent about it. And the
Yeah.
other thing is, you want to be fair about it, so that they don't go out and spend money that was hard for them to come up with, only to find out maybe it wasn't what they needed. And so I do think there's some definite due diligence that will go in there, and then that coupled with a lot of research to really find out what those angles look like. If we're talking about, if whether it's an iPhone or whether it's a new camera, does it really matter if a camera now has 4K resolution over 2K? Well, it can in certain situations. If that's something that is a big deal for cinematography, it could very well be with the Canon C line with the new 300 Mark II coming out. But it's something that we're talking only technical dynamics, or is it the kind of thing where you begin to talk about maybe the ergonomics of what that camera can do when you're trying to be run and gun, and it gives you the ability maybe to be more flexible in getting the kind of shot you're looking for. Maybe it's adding some sort of creative narrative with that um, kind of postures it into the expertise that you've got, because now it's not just about what you're talking about, it's what you can do with it and how you can share that value with other people, so that they're getting kind of a bigger picture. Hey, it's a great camera, and this is kind of how I've learned to do some really cool tricks with editing, or these things that can make this camera look great. There probably is an opportunity for you to find a place to insert yourself there very authentically, and come away with a really good solid review.
I think the biggest thing you keyed in on there is value, right? You have to have value, and one of the things I could say is breaking into the arcade retro space and also the outdoor space. None of those companies came to me and asked me how many fish I caught in the outdoor industry or how many deer I harvested. What they were concerned about, what caught their eye, was the quality of video that I was putting out, right? It was how I was delivering the video and how professional it was. And so moving forward in whatever industry that you're trying to get into or trying to do, you have to assert yourself and put out value that maybe somebody else, or I don't want to call it competition, Jeff, because there's plenty of room for everybody, right? And I think too many people get hung up on that. But
Totally.
what's going to separate you, from the other guy, right? And so, when I was doing my tech shows live, I used to always say, every year I'd stop and I'd reevaluate everything and I'd say, what separates me from everybody else doing the exact same thing that makes people want to watch me? And everything I came back to was interaction. I always, always interacted with the chat. And somebody came up in the chat room with the slogan, the most interactive tech show on the planet. Now, granted,
Mm.
I wasn't pompous and arrogant, so I wouldn't say that, but it really spoke volumes to me as a person that, yeah, there's other tech shows out there, but I was the most interactive to the community. They realized that. And I think that
Yes.
you have to find that, I don't want to call it a niche, Jeff. Maybe you've got a better term for it, but you got to find that place that makes you stand out because of you to
Well,
get those
let's just be
scoops.
honest, Steve, you're gonna stand out because of you no matter what. I mean, I think that's what the reality of it is, that, when you talk about being interactive, that goes back to your personality. That goes back to what makes Steve Haywood Steve Haywood. That's just who you are. You're very engaging, and you really care about the people you're talking to. Humanizing your brand online is the difference between success and failure, hands down. That is always gonna
Yeah.
be the deal here in social media. And I think that, the more that you can personalize the experience for others to be able to see your challenges, it's one thing to always, do all the failure behind the scenes and then go on camera and be like, I'm going to tell you how it's done. Now you're dealing with people that can't adopt your journey, because they're like, man, I'm still stuck. This guy's got it figured out, but he's not saying a whole lot.
Right.
So there's a real empowerment by not only maybe being humble might not even be the right word, but just being yourself and going, you know what? I'm gonna show you something here that takes 30 seconds, but this took me 3.5 months to find out. 'cause I didn't know you're not supposed to be running the HDMI cables over Ethernet in reverse, which is something I've done when I first started doing it. I was like, "Why doesn't this work? I paid $300 for this." Well, now I learned, and so sharing the journey with other people, I think honestly, whether I see it on LinkedIn, or Facebook, anywhere on social media, primarily where you're really talking about the word journey, we hear that a lot. That's what people really connect with. It's not so much where you're at, whether you're what we would call ahead of me or behind me, but it's the fact we're kind of on this journey together, all trying to figure out how do we use this medium to communicate, like you said, this word value. And I gotta say, Steve, this word drives me nuts, even though it's one of my favorite words. It's the same thing like the word branding. It's the same thing like the word content, like influencer, because we use these as variables. Anybody who's ever programmed knows that a variable is basically a cup, and it's what you
Mhm,
put in it that we're really what we're talking about.
mhm,
How do you define what value is? To me, value is being able to communicate something to someone else that they can directly use to make their day better, make their experience better, make their life better. And now you can even define it beyond that and get real granular about what that could look like. But for you, when you're moving the needle for other people, if you take away the live stream and you are in conversations with people that you're networking with, or standing around trying to help them fix, their computer, whatever it might be,
yeah,
when you're making a difference in their moment, and
right.
that's what value is, and that's how you create it. And let me just say one of the things you had mentioned, kind of the journey of above or below, in terms of maybe where you see yourself fitting in. My word for this year, and I put out a video a couple days ago on LinkedIn about this, is the word frequency. It's actually identity, frequency, and consistency. Those are the three that I'm really working toward this year. But the word frequency speaks volumes. Joy McAdams is an influencer on LinkedIn and shared another post about this word. And basically, it works like this. We all kind of think that we're on this totem. We have to start low and we take the elevator to success to get to the higher floors. But in reality, there are other influencers that may have a million followers that some of the people that like you will never gravitate toward these other people because you're like a and they're like a radio station. And it's the vibe that you're putting out and the frequency that you're putting out. And that made a difference for me. I've been thinking for years I kind of had it figured out. And I'm like, you know what? This is actually the way it really works. Gravitate to other people because, and then you can add on after that, whatever that looks like, but it doesn't work linearly. It's like frequencies on a radio dial. And I think that's actually transformational for me.
No, I would agree with that. I think you hit the nail on the head. We got a couple comments here in the chat room from folks. Luke Dancy, he said the secret ingredient. I'm just going to read some of this. So the secret ingredient is you. Nobody can, and of course the chat moves when I'm going to read it. He says nobody can go out and buy you and what you bring to the table. People gravitate towards what they like. He's 100% right. And Alfredo says, yeah, the Tech Buzz Interactive was interactive with the chat really well. And David Fierstein says it's a niche. And so they're all right. I mean,
Yes.
there's so many things that people can find that they like, right? And I think that's the biggest issue with getting in and trying to find a scoop. Some people say, well, you got to be in the right place at the right time. I've gotten a lot of scoops just from being connected to companies and working my tail off on non-scoopable uh, assets, if you will. Like if they put out a release on a firmware, let's use that as an example for a piece of software, where I would do an overview video, and they're like, "Wow, that's really good." So they would come to me and say, "Hey, we're going to give you an exclusive. We're going to launch this next week, but we're going to give you early access to it, and we want you to do a video on it and it show the people so they get excited about this is what's coming." Um, One of the other examples I can give is when with the arcade system, I got advanced um, authorization for firmware of a virtual PC in the cloud where I'm testing it and it's not going to be out for a couple months, but I got to do some videos on it which are exclusive. So there's only like 3 or 4, maybe half a dozen of us that have access to this out of everybody that owns this machine. So it's kind of one of those things where you're good with the little things and bigger things come. So you kind of have to do that. As hard as it is sometimes, you're like, well, I don't really want to, cover this. I don't want to put this out on social media. It's a waste of my time. But you don't know if the company's watching you. You don't know if they're looking at it going,
Right.
"Wow, this could be cool if he did this."
But you then also too though, Steve, you don't know if it's a waste of time for the people you're doing it for. Too often we get into what we would like to hear and see. And I mean, it's just you everybody's been in restaurants that either have great service, great atmosphere, or a great location. But maybe they don't have one of those three items and they still think they're doing great. And the clientele's like, hey, you should really think I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And they're not getting it because it's about them. And the minute you turn it on yourself, that's where you're going to have an issue. And I just real quick wanted to shout out to the greatest DJ in New Zealand, Ricky Prime, great friend of ours. Steve, I don't know if you remember Ricky and Blab in
I
2015. He
do.
was one of the big
I
live streamers.
I
He
do.
just woke up. So, hey, man, thanks for checking it out, Ricky. It's good to hear from you again. I haven't seen you for a while, but
So let's do this,
yeah, I
Jeff,
mean,
real quick. Your video and your audio is really staggering right now. I know we don't normally bring attention to that, but if you could refresh really quick, and I can
I'll
chat with
try it.
these guys really quick about
Sure.
this, we'll get you back in and get everything situated. I just don't. Jeff's got a lot of knowledge bombs, as I call them, and I don't want to see them go unheard. It just sometimes it happens with connections. Sometimes it happens with how things are on his end or whatever. But he'll jump back in, and we'll see if we can get him back up and just do a quick connection. But when you're doing this and you want, whether you're doing social media or video posts, you got to know what you're talking about with a lot of stuff. And Jeff had mentioned earlier on about research. I am really big on that. Whenever I'm trying to get into an industry, or if because let me put it this way. So when I'm getting into an industry, when I say that, it might be an industry where I'm a hobbyist in that industry, where I like the outdoor industry. I started as somebody that enjoyed that. And that's kind of how I started at tech and video. But I really researched and learned tech and video. I learned how things worked. Well, the same thing was true with the outdoor industry. I couldn't go in there and be one of those guys that was going to talk intelligently about the subjects of the outdoor industry if I had no clue. And so these are things that people leave out. These are key points that people leave out when it comes to understanding and knowing about the subject matter that you're talking about, because you have to be able to carry yourself in that particular field. Jeff, you just can't go into an industry and just not know anything. You got to do your research, and you hit that key. Whatever you're getting into, you must do your research. You must pay to play, so to speak, right? I mean, that's how it works.
The way I define it is that if you've got a passion for it to the point where you want to start talking about it in front of people you don't even know through a little teeny lens on the internet, that passion should equal something, right? It's
Yep.
something that you wanna get out there and network, go to meetups, go to other, events, get into the industry events. I mean, get into the Facebook groups. There's Facebook groups for everything. Some of you guys probably don't know this, but I actually am a game show host in a third life. My family's been doing a game show for about 4 years, and, I'm now a member of a Facebook group for game show and trivia host, which is completely ridiculous, but
Where's it
they're
found?
built
Where's it
in.
found so that people want to look it up?
Gameshowloco.com and, Facebook, you go to Facebook and type in Game Show Loco. It's in the Northern Virginia, area, and, we've got 3 coming up next week, which is unbelievable, including one at a resort. So I'm calling it my Vegas week, Steve, and, but the point is that even on Facebook, there are Facebook groups for anything, and so you can find the information now. It's I'm not that old, but back in my day when things closed on a Friday and you had WordPerfect and you're trying to get an answer and you had to wait till Monday to make a phone call and there was no internet, not cool. Today, you've got no excuse. You've got
That's right.
Google, got a million other things. And, when we talk about, like, what does that angle look like? What does that scoop look like? Let's say everybody's talking about, the new, Alexa that has just come out. Um, they'll all go through and list, these are the things it will do for you, and this is how cool it is. I'm a technology reporter. I've covered CES and other things. My angle in it would be, what about privacy concerns? Are you concerned that people are listening? And now, I share a lot of my own, profile. There are a lot of indicators that there are people who've heard conversations before in these companies. To me, that's a much more interesting story
Yep.
than whether or not the button is bigger and you can hear it a little better. Those things are irrelevant to me. So there's always an angle you can find if you really look hard.
Yeah, and then we're at that time right now that we wanna thank the folks over at Telestream, Jeff, and for allowing us to do this show, right?
Absolutely. You know, the Wirecast gear line, this is incredible. The new 2.0 is out, and this box is your live streaming video production center all in one in a box. And if any of you have seen Jeremy Klusterman, who works with Telestream at streaming at the Streaming Geek Summit, you know this is a box that you don't want to be without. If you're at the place where you want full redundancy, you want to know that the hardware is going to work the way you want it to, and you want to know that it's the quality of Telestream and certainly of Wirecast. It's an all-in-one unit. It runs on Windows and it is powered by Xeon processors and it has XLR microphone inputs on the back. This is a definitive step up from the version 1.0 Wirecast gear that has been out up until here the last few weeks. And obviously, the pricing is priced in a manner that should make you excited if you have any experience with broadcast TV and know that back in the not too long ago, back in the day, lenses on cameras are 15, $20,000. So the world has shrunk for under $10,000, you have the ability, even 5,000, 6,000, you have the ability to put yourself in a situation where you can go into a world, live stream your county debates like what I did with the Wirecast gear that I have. I have the 1.0, and know that it's going to work the way you want it to. And so, for more information, you can always go to telestream.net and search for Wirecast gear, and you can see Video Guys has given it. You know, it's another one of the accolades, top product of 2019. And Steve, I think
Yep.
that anybody who is really serious about their game, leveling up live streaming in a way that is built for the professional live stream or broadcast, this is how you really want to do it. This is the
Yep.
way that you can do it and not be fearful and know that you're coming away with something good.
Yeah, and we did something really unique for you guys that really helps us out here at the show. Yeah, you could go to Telestream's website and just, like Jeff said, search out gear. But what really helps us and keeps the lights on, so to speak, here for the show and keeps the show going, use that link, telestream.net/on social. That is going to let them know that, hey, we are checking this stuff out. We're interested. And that really helps the show. So we'd
It
encourage
does.
you
It does.
we'd encourage you guys to use that link and help us out and check that out. Like you said, it's a great product. And right before we did that break, Jeff, um, one of the gentlemen's in the chat room here, Lee Love TV, he says, you just being you is not enough, and I kind of agree with this to an extent because you have to have that it factor, and I think Lee will probably agree with this. You have to have that it factor, right? You could say you want to do it, but if it was this easy, everybody on the internet would be doing it, right? You have that it factor where you can get on a camera, you can keep things going if you were the only one doing it and I was fixing something or in that aspect, I have enough of the it factor that like when you dropped off, I could keep everything going and do it because I've done it. It's something that you either learn or you just have it. You do or you don't. So I,
Well,
I would agree with that.
I would say that you would need to break that down just a little bit because we're talking about presentation factor maybe in that case, because I always look at it this way. The word "it" can mean 2 different things. Either, "Hey, he's got the it factor," "Ugh, he's got the it factor."
Yeah, that's true.
Um, so you're right. I mean, there's an ability you get more comfortable, but you know how I've gotten comfortable doing live streaming is, I mean, my mom was a TV producer. I grew up around it.
Yeah.
I do it enough that
Just
it
doing it.
starts to take away the fear, and I
Yep.
say this all the time when I'm doing video as authority on LinkedIn. I get scared every single time I get in front of this camera when I'm doing it, especially on LinkedIn for some reason. I think I look at LinkedIn almost like standing in front of the room full of your peers at college reading a book report or a paper, and you don't know what they're thinking. But there's nothing wrong with being afraid because that's actually a great response to your body saying, "Hey, you think this is important enough that you want to make sure that you want things a certain way." All you have to do is prepare and be you. It's not about trying to be Casey Kasem. I spent years trying to be that guy that's got the great news voice and all that. And you know what I've had to learn the last 5 years? People wanna see somehow, I don't know why, but they wanna see Jeff. They don't wanna see news guy Jeff or sportscaster Jeff or game show Jeff.
Yeah.
Whether, and it's all back to frequency, Steve. It's about when you become more human and more personal and, do things like, not be afraid to wear a grape colored shirt and, you do your frequency, and that's what you gotta do to get out there and just do it. I love what my pastor says, "Embrace the awkward because that's gonna get you farther." And, sometimes the only way around the mountain is through it.
So, I'm one of those guys, like you said, you get nervous when you get on camera and get in front. I'm the opposite. I'm the polar opposite. I don't get nervous getting in front. I'm just talking to a camera. Even though I know there's people on the other end, even though I know there's people staring and watching, whatever, what scares me is technical failure. Something that I have no
Yeah.
control over that could go down. I have control over what I say on the air. I have control
Right.
over the direction of a show, but what I don't have control over is something just dies and then it puts you into immediate panic and you
There's
have to
no
try
doubt
to keep
about
it
it. I
cool.
think we saw that happen again today, and here's a great example, Steve, 2nd week in a row, I've made a mistake. I have a VPN that I run, when I'm
Ah,
working, didn't turn my VPN off. Well, why did that all of a
ah.
sudden start getting funky like it was coming out of the Ukraine? Because it probably was. So, um, but what do you do? But see, that's a great thing about live streaming. You find a way to be cool no matter what happens. You will find a way to make it work. And again, it's not TV. It doesn't have to be everything lined up nice and beautiful. Your content should and your stream of thought should be. But how you get there, it's just, again, it's your frequency and how you be more of you. And in finding those scoops is where you're going to partner with the right people, start following the RSS feeds of the brands and companies that mean something to you. Start connecting on LinkedIn with employees in that company.
Yep.
Begin creating a little relationship there and saying, "Hey, Ralph, do they really mean they're going to take this to Europe and they're not going to do it in America or whatever it might be?" And that's how the reporters do it, and that's how you begin to get that rapport. Every job for a journalist comes with a little caveat in the paragraph down below that says, "Must have a comprehensive Rolodex," which, if you don't know what a Rolodex is, that's back when I was 20 years old, but it's basically you need to have a lot of people that you know to be able to get the stories.
Well, and there are, and if you've ever seen it on even TV in movies, there are certain companies that say, "No, get such and such reporter. That's who we want to deal with," because they know that how they're going to deliver the content, how they're going to handle under pressure. Jeff, you said like with your VPN situation just a little bit ago, people might watch that and that just that little bit and say, "Wow, they handle that really good. We want them to do this." I'm just using it as an
That's
example, right?
right. No, that's true. That's
They
right.
they held their cool. They got back up. It was seamless. There was, just a minor disturbance. They're looking for that as opposed to somebody that's going bananas and losing their cool on air and delivering
Good
a
comes from panic.
well, right, because depending on the scoop, the source, I mean, it could be something related to national security or national news. How are you going to handle that under that kind of pressure? Like maybe we're being invaded with nuclear bombs, and you have to deliver this to a world that's unaware of what's going on. These are
Well,
the
I would go
types
to
of things.
Carl with traffic and weather, right in the middle of that somehow. But, Carl, is Cleveland still here? No, but,
Yeah.
You know, I think I think the dynamic, like what you're talking about is especially like in a TV setup, it's not just the person trying to speak, but there's a glass in front of them because of a teleprompter. Somebody else is giving you your words.
Yep.
While they're giving you those words that are changing dynamically second to second, this is the job I used to have, talking in the guy's ear, trying not to interrupt him while he's speaking, but you've got to give him information. And so that's a dance and a half. And if you get on YouTube, you'll see a million people that somehow when the prompter breaks or there's breaking news, they're just kind of and they do what we do. But again, if you take yourself out of it and stop thinking about you and just get back to what am I trying to do? I'm trying to tell them that there was an earthquake. We all know about it, but this is where we believe the fires are. This is where you want to go to the nearest school for safety. Here's the 800 number to find out if your friends are safe. And then everybody can mark themselves safe on Facebook. So you have to really just get yourself back into your own story and not about you. I'm telling you, it's that weird dynamic. The more you think about yourself, the less you're going to be effective. It's kind of like a little pendulum.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think with doing this, there's so many tips and tricks that you can put out there to people, but I think ultimately to kind of put a bow around this, relationships. I think Jeff and I would both agree, if not even the people in the chat room, relationships are key when you're trying to be relevant in whatever industry that you're trying to get into. Education's great, being yourself is great, going out there, standing out in front of the crowd is great, but if you have no relationships, you're not going to get very far. It's ideal.
Well,
Go to these companies. What can I do for you? There's so many times that people go to the companies and say, "What can you do for me?"
right.
What can you do for that company? Just say, "Hey, I'm new into let's just use tech for an example. I'm new in the tech world. Is there anything that you're trying to push really hard this month? Can I help you? I'm trying to get out into the tech world and I could really use some opportunities here. Oh yeah, we're trying to get this remote controlled I don't know, speaker dog that runs on the
Yep.
ground. Well, we could send you a 30-day loan with it. And if you could do a review and write it up and you say, "Oh, yeah, that's great." And you do it. By the end of it and they like the piece, they might even say, "Ah, just keep it. You did really good." And then the next time something like that comes up, your name's on their list. You made the list in a good way. Um,
That's right. You're inside the circle, according
you're
to some of the movies, right?
you just
You know,
gotta
and
you gotta break the ice the first time, Jeff. You just gotta get that first person.
you're totally right about that because we all know, I mean, in the world we live in today, how many people, in the chat think resumes are still the way to get a job? They're not.
Not.
We all know that, right? And so this should be the world, no matter whether it's looking for employment or whether it's looking for the scoop in the story. You need to be making connections on LinkedIn. You need to be doing it on Facebook. You need to be connecting with people in front of you in real world coffee over at Chick-fil-A or wherever it might be, because that's where you're gonna be able to get that connection point where people are going to remember you and trust you enough to say, "Hey, I think this guy can do the job." And unfortunately or fortunately, however you look at it, that really is the way the world works these days.
Yep.
It's no longer who's got the best demo reel. It's, I know that guy's not gonna let me down. There's a character there that I like about him. And talking about, reaching out to just see how you can help somebody, just a shout out to one of my, buds that's watching today, Lee Love, who, has got a new YouTube channel. Incredible photographer. You gotta check this guy's work out at leelove.tv. And the thing I love about Lee is that that's how he approached me. We were friends years ago. We just recently reconnected over the last couple months. And he spent a lot of time hearing me just kinda talk about what I'd like to do different. He's been a great sounding board. And I can tell you the value for that is something I'm not gonna forget, and when you do that for other people, when you give of yourself, really not even looking for anything in return, that's going to come back because people, reciprocate value when they get it. It's just the way it is. And, I just think that, that's probably one of those golden nuggets we've really fallen asleep on, is just to be there for somebody else, even in a business sense, and I think that's a good thing for anybody to do.
Yeah, Lee reached out to me a couple, I would say a week or two ago, and kind of friended me on Facebook, introduced himself, and he was really excited about what we were doing, and saying, "Hey, I could help you here, I could help you there." So, I mean, like you said, it's just building those relationships, right? He wanted to build a relationship, and you just never know. Just like us, you and I, we built relationships, and
Right.
everybody else. That's what kind of propels you in the industry. But Jeff, we're just about we're actually overtime, but I felt like that last little bit was worth talking about because this subject comes up and people don't know how to get started in whatever, whether you're a photographer like you said, like Lee is, or you're somebody that is doing video, or maybe you're shooting Instagram, and these types of things. You have to know how to get started. It's not just going to happen just because you created a YouTube channel. So I hope you guys found some value in this. But again, we want to thank our future Emmy Award winner,
You
Mr.
need to
Jeff.
stop that, dude. You're trying to embarrass me now.
No, no, man, we're speaking it out. That's the way we're doing it
I
here.
know what you're doing, and I think we'll have a good night, but it's gonna be really cool one way or the other, but, I just wanna just tell everybody, me personally, I really appreciate the fact that you all are taking time out of your day to kinda watch the conversations we have when Marty is certainly with us as well, and, let us know what we can do to make this show more meaningful to you, where we can do things where we can really move that needle for you, because we're not saying this to just tell other people. We wanna be able to build something here that people really get something out of, and it's always great to be with you, Steve. You know that, bud.
Oh, absolutely. And make sure you guys check him out, Jeff in TV. And he's always available for if you guys need help with video or anything like that, branding, those types of things. As he said, Marty will be back next week with us. But yeah, get that information out to us. Listen, last year you guys were sending us video setups of your studio. Maybe you want let's put this out there, Jeff, before we wrap this.
Yeah,
Maybe let's open it up further to instead of just video setups, talk about what you're trying to do on social media. Put a video together, 1 to 2 minutes. Tell us what you're trying to do to make an impact on social media, and what are some of your hang up points, and we'll play them, and we'll get the community involved. We'll get other people, even if we don't have the answer. I'm sure there's somebody out there that we could bring on
right.
that could dialogue this. But let's get it out there. Let's let this community drive the type of content that we talk about. Jeff, I think opening it up that way just kind of came to me with what you were saying. I think is
Yes.
ideal.
I think it's incredibly, opportune, and I would even say, Steve, we could do a future show I would love to do a show on the myth of likes and follows because I think there's so much value placed on something that we
Yep.
really don't know enough about. People with 100,000 followers are not making a different living than people who aren't, and so just depends on who you are. But there's enough information out there. I think we can all learn together, and I think it's a great idea.
Well, look for that coming because I'm sure that's going to be put on the list for On Social. Guys, my name is Stephen Haywood. You can find me at thetechbuzz.net. Pretty much everywhere is that, but also make sure you go over to telestream.net/onsocial. Check out all the great products Telestream has to offer because without them, we wouldn't be doing this show right now. So go subscribe to the YouTube channel, and it's Telestream Tube or Wirecast Tube. They have two channels. You can also head on over to the Facebook page, give them a like on the Telestream Wirecast page, and also the Telestream LLC page. And listen, guys, we really appreciate you, like Jeff said, taking the time out of your busy schedules to sit and have a great afternoon on Thursday with us. We'll see you on the next one.